Okay, we'll go ahead and end public comment. Can you hear me, Daniel?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you, Marshall.
Yeah, excuse me. Would you like to give some initial answers to the questions that were asked during the public comment here?
Yeah, I just sort of the general comment.
Excuse me, I gotta go get some water, so I'll be right back. though. Okay, you can go ahead, Daniel. I'll be right back.
That there are uncertainties with respect to groundwater sustainability in the monitoring program, and however the general comment from the executive director would be that the BMC is currently undertaking a number of initiatives to improve our understanding of basin conditions, both under current conditions as well as our ability to better predict future conditions. That includes an evaluation of the monitoring well network. It includes pursuing grant funding to develop a transient model, and a number of other initiatives to improve our basin understanding. And then just one correction, there was a comment made about rainfall assumptions in the sustainable yield that assumed climate change impacts that would increase rainfall. That I just want to clarify that no, the rainfall assumptions included in the sustainable yield estimate were based on historic data that incorporated the most recent rainfall data that we have available to us at this point.
Thank you, Daniel. Anybody else like to comment, or should we move on to our last item here? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Number 8, the executive director's report. That Daniel.
Yes, so pleased to present the executive director's report for February 16th, 2022. A number of updates here, and as the BMC might notice, there's not a number of substantial items on the BMC agenda today, but the BMC staff thought that it would be beneficial to hold the meeting so that we could provide updates on a number of key initiatives that are currently underway for the benefit of the basin. And so many of those will be covered in the executive director's report. The first one is a new funding opportunity that may be of interest to the BMC or the individual BMC parties, but round 2 of the Prop 1 implementation grant cycle has been initiated, and there will be a call for projects scheduled to open on March 2nd, 2022. This grant provides opportunities to get external funding for implementation or decision support tool projects. The scoring criteria for this grant program is still underway, but typically this grant program favors shovel-ready projects or projects that are close to construction and have environmental permitting and other planning phases completed. So we'll be discussing this opportunity at a BMC staff level, party staff level, and see if we can't identify projects that could be a potential viable candidate for that program. An update on the water recycling funding program. This is an initiative we've talked about numerous times at BMC meetings, but I want to pleased to announce key milestone. On Friday, the Los Osos DSD submitted the application for the water recycling funding program grant to develop a transient model and to utilize that model to be able to analyze a number of different recycled water, supplemental water, and future climate condition scenarios for the basin. So an exciting development for that project. Moving down to other BMC initiatives, the basin metric evaluation. This is an initiative that was identified and prioritized by the BMC in calendar year 2021 and initiated in calendar year 2022. That evaluation of the metrics is underway, and the draft recommendations have been provided to BMC staff, but are still under review. And these is anticipated that any potential modifications to the BMC metrics, along with procedures for how any modifications to the metrics would be implemented will be brought to the BMC at a future meeting. Moving down to the transient groundwater model update, as I described earlier, the grant application was submitted last week, but also the letter requesting access to the $150,000 in funding that the county budgeted was submitted on January 27th, 2022. It's anticipated that hopefully both approvals, the water resource funding program and the county's approval, can proceed in parallel, in which and once both of those are received, the LOCSD can solicit proposals from consulting firms in an effort to procure the necessary services to develop the model and complete the study. The wellhead survey update is that, and we've provided this, it was completed in October of 2021, but more recently, the BMC's hydrogeologist has received all of that wellhead survey data and will be incorporating it into the annual report and the water level elevation information that will be included in that report and analyzed within that report. Moving down to status of basin plan implementation and funding plans, and an update on the funding study and the development of the funding model. As the BMC knows, in October, the BMC approved a proposal from SCI Consulting Group to update the evaluation of funding options available to the BMC and the community of Los Osos, and also to develop a funding model to help better inform the BMC and the BMC parties on the potential revenue generating and fee impact of the different funding options. And SCI has prepared a draft funding TM, and that is also currently under staff review and will be brought to the BMC at a future meeting. And with respect to BMC legal counsel, as Director Zimmer described earlier, in the approval of the 2022 budget, the BMC authorized an additional $20,000 in legal counsel contingency to be included in the executive director's budget, and authorized the executive director to be able to utilize $5,000 of that before requiring BMC approval for any essential BMC legal services that may be necessary. And then moving down to county planning, there's a number of updates that have been provided by county planning. The first one is a new tool or resource available. So the county has updated on its planning and building for the community of Los Osos, provided a lot of information on the allowable types of development within Los Osos, both, and a description of other planning and growth related documents. And so hopefully this could be a great resource for everyone to be able to access and better understand the current and potential future regulations with respect to growth within the community. A related item is the Los Osos Retrofit to Build program, the Title 19 water offset update. We've talked about this initiative at previous meetings, but pleased to share that the county has executed a contract with Madaus Water Management. Madaus Water Management is underway with a study to update water usage estimates for rural and urban and rural residences sourcing water from the Los Osos groundwater basin, and to propose new water conservation measures for the water offset program, and to estimate the potential water savings for the community. The project is currently in the data compilation phase, but I hope to have, we'll have updates at future meetings, as well as updates will be posted on the county's website. Just one thing to add here, the other thing that this study will provide is potential estimates of future water demand within the community under the assumptions of the current community plan, to help better inform the BMC and other parties of what additional sustainable yield may be required if a development is allowed to occur within the community. The Los Osos Community Plan is currently under review by Coastal Commission. A hearing date has not been scheduled. However, the county is working diligently with BMC staff to discuss potential policy changes and considering ongoing basin monitoring and basin plan program implementation efforts. Yeah, the rest of those updates are not necessarily new information, but additional information on the Los Osos Community Plan update can also be found on the county's website. With respect to ADUs, on February 11th, the Coastal Commission considered the county's coastal accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And staff's recommendation for that ordinance was to not allow ADUs to occur within the Los Osos Basin or within the Los Osos Groundwater Basin Plan area. The Coastal Commission approved staff recommendation at its meeting on the 11th or last Friday. And the County Board of Supervisors will have 6 months to review and accept the suggested or consider accepting the suggested modifications. There's also the Los Osos vacation rental ordinance that was reviewed by the Coastal Commission on the 11th as well. I don't have an understanding, or I don't know what actions the Coastal Commission took on that ordinance, but maybe one of the directors or somebody else can provide an update on that. And then finally, moving down to the Los Osos wastewater project flow information, we have a complete data set for calendar year 2021, and we'll be providing updated information for calendar year 2022 when available. One thing I will add is the table included in the executive director's report didn't have totals, and so I can just provide some verbal updates on the totals. The influent flow to the wharf in 2021 that was measured or estimated, measured at 544 acre feet per year. And then the total Broderson discharge was 474 acre feet, 20.4 acre feet to Bay Ridge, 16.53 acre feet to Sea Pines, and then 0.5 acre feet for construction water and 1.7 acre feet for ag users. And that completes the executive director's report.
Hey, anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Daniel?
I do on the effluent report for the wastewater treatment plant. There's a curious situation where the influent total for the year was 544 acre feet, and the recycled water output is 563 acre feet. I'm guessing that there's an error there someplace. Otherwise, if that's true, then there may have been 18.9 acre feet of added groundwater that was added during the treatment process. And maybe somebody from the county can comment on that, if that's true. I suspect it's an error though.
I can address that, Director Cody. Laura, do you mind going to the last slide? So this is the table with the numbers from the executive director's report with totals included. I think there's an error in your calculation, Director Cody, with respect to the total recycled water discharge. When I added up the numbers, I only got 513 acre feet, but which still does represent a discrepancy between the 544 acre feet that was measured as influent, but maybe would provide potential other considerations. And so I reached out to County Public Works staff for an explanation between the differences between the influent number and, you know, what we could call the discharge and recycled water delivery number, what comes into the plant versus what leaves the plant. And the primary sources for that uncertainty are as follows. The recycled water ponds at the plant store effluent, and operation lowers and raises the water levels in those ponds to benefit their operation. So the upshot of that is that there is storage at the Los Osos wastewater plant. And so the amount of water that comes in within 1 year is not going to necessarily equal the amount of water that leaves in 1 year. It could be higher or lower depending on what operations staff does with those ponds. Are they lowering those ponds with respect to where they started at the beginning of the year, or they are increasing the water level elevation in those ponds? Additionally, the ponds evaporate water during warm months. So that would lead, you know, to a lower effluent number than influent number. Additionally, water, it leaves the ponds as sludge as it's hauled to the landfill. Additionally, a minor amount of water leaves as screenings or leaves with the screenings that are hauled off. And then additionally, storm water is not measured as influent to the plant. So any rain that falls on the plant site itself is retained as storm water, treated, and then discharged with the recycled water.
Thank you, Dan. I must have made a mistake with my arithmetic again. That's a great explanation. I sure appreciate all that explanation.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Any other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, Laura, let's go to public comment on the executive director's report, please.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9. On your computer, please raise your hand. All right, Jeff, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jeff Edwards, and the first thing I'd like to speak to is the SCI consulting group effort. I've objected to this before, and I continue to object. I think it's a less than productive exercise regarding BMC funding and organization. You don't need to do this to own assets and infrastructure. You don't need to do it to fund the administration of the BMC. You don't need it for funding projects. The purveyors are doing that. You don't need it to pay consultants or get to the approximately 200 rural single-family homes that are on wells and get them to pay. It's going to cost you more to create this entity and funding mechanism than you will get revenue from those roughly 200 single-family homes. So don't do it. Retaining SCI in the beginning was a mistake, and I continue to think it is. The next thing I'd like to speak to is the Title 19 retrofit to build. And I'm looking forward to this. And I'm sure the sustainability group is. My belief is that the retrofit potential, the conservation potential of over 200 acre feet is likely equal to the total demand from the build out of the community over 30 years or whatever. So I think I'm looking forward to that program very much. Then there's the Los Osos Community Plan. And in the ED report, there's reference to potential policy changes. That is between the county and BMC staffs. What are the potential policy changes? What's the range? I have no idea. There's the ADU ordinance that went to the Coastal Commission on Friday, was approved per staff. And as I mentioned at that meeting, since 2010, when the wastewater project was approved, Los Osos purveyors, the urban demand has dropped from 1,620 acre feet per year by 33% to 1,063 acre feet with a fairly constant population. And so I think we're doing quite well. Then I would like to refer to the Los Osos vacation rental ordinance, which also was approved per staff. But why it's in this agenda packet and in the ED report at all is a mystery to me. Vacation rentals, it's well documented, use substantially less water than single family homes or even multifamily for that matter. Then I have a question about a report. I've heard about a report being prepared by Joe Street, the Coastal Commission geologist, to speak to our basin. Maybe the ED has some information on that. And lastly, I'm confused as to whether or not the BMC is entered into a joint nitrate study with S&T regarding nitrate sourcing. That never really came out. Please answer the question whether or not the BMC is doing a joint study. Thank you very much.
All right, Keith, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes, regarding the water recycling program planning, WRP, what is it? Program planning, WRPP. Some of this money should be used to address PFAS and to add monitoring wells to address the effects of recycled water program, both positive and negative. Regarding the lower aquifer monitoring evaluation, this wasn't underlined. It's not part of the update, but at least part of this is done because there is a invoice for well modification TM. I think it was in December of last year. And that was originally combined when it was approved with an evaluation of other monitoring sites for new wells. So what is the update on this? Regarding the transient model, I'm glad the CSD is in charge of this, but I'm still concerned it will result in continued over-reliance on the model and predictions not supported by sufficient good quality data. A model is only as good as the data that goes into it and the monitoring program you have in place. Regarding the LOCP, I really don't think what you have in place or what I can imagine you putting in place, but I will wait to have a reserved judgment on that regarding the metrics, will allow the county to meet the CCC's standard, the Coastal Commission standard of conclusive evidence for setting sustainable build-out limits and staying within them. Regarding Jeff's comment about our interest in the Madaus review, if there's 200 acre feet of conservation available, then it should be used for the current population because it produces twice as much reduction in water use and seawater intrusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
There's no further public comment at this time.
Okay, Daniel, would you like to answer any of those questions that were asked or defer them?
Sorry, yeah, just reviewing my notes here, Marshall. I guess just one with respect to the funding study. There is not currently a formal funding mechanism for the Basin Management Committee. The parties are voluntarily contributing funds at percentages equal to their voting ratios, which were established as part of the stipulated judgment. But it is important that we establish a more formal funding mechanism for the BMC to fund ongoing monitoring, management, and support the implementation of basin plan programs. No awareness of a Coastal Commission study for the basin. And at the last meeting, as described in the notes, the nitrate study budget item was deferred and not approved as part of the calendar year 2022 budget. And then I would like to provide an update on the lower aquifer monitoring program. Yeah, that task was approved in the calendar year 2022 budget. Work on that task has initiated, but BMC party staff have not received any recommendations from that work yet, and don't anticipate having those recommendations, in the very near term. So, those would be my responses.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Is there any other comments? Otherwise, we'll move on to item 9.
Yes.
Okay, last item,
Oh,
other
wait a
than,
minute. I would like to make
okay,
comments on that. So my first one is with regard to, there's a mention in there about staff making some recommendations in the future through the BMC for changes in the way basin metrics are calculated. And when that happens or before that happens, I'd like to see the staff make a recommendation for how the stipulated judgment or the basin plan would be updated and in a manner that would be acceptable to the court. And the number two is about those basin metric proposals for making changes to basin metrics. I would personally appreciate it if those proposals would come in as individual proposals for individual changes to basin metrics and not as a very large multi-hundred-page document or 100-page document describing many changes, many proposals in the same document. And those are my comments. Thank you.
thank you, Charlie. Do you have any response to those, Daniel, or you just want to put those in for future reference?
Just response would be that, yeah, good comments, and BMC staff will take those into consideration as that initiative moves forward.
Thank you. Okay, now Laura, we'll move on to item 9B, which is the update on the status of the basin plan infrastructure projects. We're going to receive a report and provide input to staff on future direction. So Daniel, it's yours.
Thank you, Marshall. Yeah, I just wanted to provide an update on two projects being led by the Los Osos CSD. The first project is the Program A Upper Aquifer Well on 8th Street. The project's fully funded and construction is currently underway. Unfortunately, we're experiencing a supply chain delay on some of the electrical equipment, but as soon as that is resolved, construction can commence and that project will be completed. And then the other update is for the second Program C well that the LOCSD is leading. The minor use permit application was submitted to the county on October 21, and then construction is anticipated to begin. Another correction to be made here, the status update says Q1 2022, but based on latest estimates and timing, the actual date date range should be Q2 2022. And no other significant updates on basin plan projects at this time.
Okay, any questions or comments before we go to public comment?
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Charlie. Just Bruce, if someone might refresh my memory, please, is the second Program C well fully funded for completion, including, developing a full integration into the water system, or is there funding yet to be secured on that?
My understanding is that program is fully funded. The CSD has funds to complete that project. However, the LOCSD has applied for grant funding, and if successful, which preliminary indications point to it being successful in obtaining some external grant funding, those grant funds would go to offset costs to the CSD for that project and allow the CSD to then use those funds for other initiatives in support of the basin and/or their water system.
Excellent, thanks.
Hey,
I have a comment also in addition to make to 9B is I'd just like to say that S&T this is relative to the intertie project in Program C, that S&T has contracted with a regional engineering firm to identify and develop a redundant water source for S&T, which, as you guys understand, is difficult in our western area, which is inundated by seawater intrusion and septic pollution. But we'll be, as a part of that program, we'll be interviewing or asking questions to the other two water purveyors in the next couple of weeks to identify the proper way to either make an intertie or possibly develop other alternative redundant sources of water. So we're working now diligently to address that Program C intertie issue that's been riding on that project plan.
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
Great, Charlie. If you want to send me some language, I can update the status of that program in the status of basin plan infrastructure projects for future meetings.
Okay, I will.
All right, thank you. All right, Laura, let's go to public comment, please.
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. All right, Jeff, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you again. Good afternoon, Jeff Edwards. And I wanted to speak to a couple of the items on the Basin Plan Infrastructure Project list. And I've mentioned this before, but it continues to show up under Program B, the community nitrate removal facility. And presently, the Golden State Water Company does have a blending facility and nitrate removal project at Fern and Rosina, but it's listed here as having the potential to be a community nitrate removal facility. And I think that has so many complications that it really shouldn't be on the list at all. And so I'll say that. And then under Program C, expansion well number 3, lower aquifer, the project has been deferred under adaptive management. Well, I would respectfully submit that Program C number 2 well at Bay Oaks and South Bay Boulevard that the CSD is pursuing it's anticipated based on the tech memo that Cleith Harris Group generated that probably a 60 to 80 acre feet of additional yield for that well. When you combine that to what's currently being considered as a safe yield of 2,380 acre feet, you just barely get over 2,400, 2,440 to be exact. So with that, it seems to be an imperative at this juncture that we pursue well number 3, that's expansion well 3 under Program C. And the staff note is that, again, the project has been deferred under adaptive management. Well, I would again submit that needs to be changed, that the reduction in the safe yield and the anticipated yield from the number 2 Program C well are not going to be sufficient to realize the goals that we have for basin yield and the ability to sustain the demand that is forthcoming. So I would urge corrections in those 2 categories under Program B, the Golden State Water project site at Fern and Rosina, and then secondly, please correct the deferment status of the Program C number 3 well. It's active. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, Lindy, you just have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I guess I wanted to comment on the continuing goals number 3, where it says allocate costs equitably among all parties who benefit from the basin's water resources, assessing special and general benefits. I'm not sure how the people that are on private wells who are benefiting, I guess, from the clean water that they can get to, how they are participating. And I don't understand why we still haven't had the discussion about monitoring the private wells, because we know historically 15 to 20% reduction normally happens once that metering project gets onto a well, because people do then become aware of how much water they're using and possibly wasting. So I don't know how you can say that you're allocating costs as a continuing goal if you're not going to discuss the metering costs that would go on to the private wells. And they should be paid for the basin by the basin program, I believe. And I kind of want to go back to the recycle water. I know this is a little off of the immediate goals, but we're providing, as Jeff brought up on the Goodwin property, we're providing the recycled water that we all pay for at 1/700th or 1/70th of the cost of anybody else that's getting it. So these goals are, they need to get tightened up a little bit, is my comment. So thank you.
All right, Keith, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Since the BMC was formed and started implementing the basin plan over 6 years ago, you've completed 2 Program A tasks, the water systems interconnection and a blending project. It sounds possibly from Mr. Cody's comments that that's one of those maybe is not fully functional. And you've completed 1 Program C well. 2 wells are still a Program A well and Program C well, the second one, are still in the works after 6 years. In 2018, based on modeling and positive metric results that reversed a year later, you deferred the 3rd Program C well and several other mitigation measures. You failed to upgrade the conservation program as planned, and last year you basically abandoned it, instead endorsing the Title 19 retrofit to build program, which competes with the BMC program. This report says you completed the monitoring plan, 1 nested observation well, though the program needs significant additional upgrades. And now you'll be sinking $330,000 in grants and funding into a new model and several modeling runs. Although you won't have the data to support them, how can you predict changes in water levels and seawater intrusion when you can't measure them now? Meantime, the CSD and Golden State have clearly shifted priorities to support the county's effort to add new development, the CSD by supporting imported water and Golden State by supporting what Mr. Zimmer considers to be the county's right to approve all development on every vacant lot. What happened to the first 2 immediate goals and to the need for urgent action? I don't think I'm alone when I say this direction doesn't represent my interest as a homeowner or water customer. Further, your reliance on the model for making decisions, combined with what seems to be an aversion to good quality data and clear, measurable, and time-specific objectives, is an artifact of an era of basin management, of an earlier era of basin management, pre-Sigma and pre-climate change, when managers would have a consultant balance a basin on paper using a model, but never had to actually balance the basin. It's time to show with conclusive evidence you can stop seawater intrusion. No more empty promises. Thank you.
There's no further public comment at this time.
I'm sorry, my computer is not working here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was having some technical problems here. Okay, so do we have any further comments by the directors on item number 9B?
Just appreciate the update.
Okay, thank you. All right, with then we'll go ahead and move to item number 10, which is an adjournment. I want to thank everybody for having a very productive meeting and for your input into the meeting, both the members of the committee and the public. And we'll look forward to our next meeting. All right, thank you. Meeting's adjourned.